Okay. All right. So for sacral chakra, we're going to start on our backs um, with knees bent, soles of the feet on the floor. And then I would recommend putting your object, whatever it is, a block, a folded blanket or towel, behind your hips. So lift your hips, tuck the block or blanket behind you so that your hips can rest on something with a little bit of elevation. So the focus of putting a little bit more weight directly onto our sacrum might help us to kind of feel that more specifically, lifting a little bit of the rest of our spine off the floor. That's the idea anyway. And then once you've got your sacrum elevated, feel free to take your feet a little wide, let your knees rest together if you'd like. If you prefer to walk your legs out toward the end of your mat, it's a much more, I find it to be a much more kind of, not extreme, but it's kind of bowing your body in a way that we don't normally bow. So don't worry about trying this if it's not something that's comfortable for you. But if you feel like you're ready for a bit of a hip opener, go ahead and walk your legs to the end of your mat and try that out. And once you get there, just let yourself land for a moment. Feeling your sacrum come back to the block or the blanket, towel. So we're on our second chakra, sacral chakra, which is called your Svadhisthana. My Sanskrit is not perfect, so don't quote me on how the pronunciation of that is. So your sacral chakra is the energy wheel or energy point for our creativity and our emotions. It's in the area of our reproductive organs, which kind of makes sense to me that it would be the place for creativity, because you are actually creating things from that part of the body, other things that aren't yourself, especially the female anatomy is designed to do those kinds of things, create another human being. So I think that's kind of neat, but as a concept. So anyway, the home of our creative center and our emotions. And it relates to how you, it's kind of the center for where how do I word that? We're thinking about how you relate to your own emotions as well as to others, the emotions of others. So that's kind of the focus today, creativity and emotions. So this can be a place that's kind of locked or built up stress or tension for a lot of folks, especially for those of us that sit or walk or run a lot. We get a lot of tension in our hips and in our glutes and thighs and low back. So I would give yourself the time and permission to take the time that you need to warm up this area today. And if anything feels like it's just too much for you, don't go there. So now that we're here, take a moment just to focus on your breath. I've done a lot of talking, so I'm going to give you some time just to Sit with your breath. Come back to your mind. Begin to notice what kinds of thoughts come up. And see if you can continue to bring yourself back to just being in the space that you're in right now, back to your breath. When you're ready for a little bit of movement, if your feet aren't already on the floor, plant them on the floor. Just behind your hips. And you can stay right here on the block. Or if you'd like to lift your hips off the block, coming up to bridge that's off the block. Go ahead and press your shoulders backward into the floor, your upper back, press it back into the floor. Curl your tailbone up into your belly a little bit, dig your heels into the floor, and lift your hips up away from the block if you'd like to. Any amount. On your next exhale, lower yourself back down to the block. Let's try that once more. So press your shoulders upper back, dig your heels in. Begin to lift your hips off the block. If you'd like, you can move the block or pillow, towel, whatever, out of your way. Take one more breath here. And on your exhale, lower your spine down one vertebra at a time, back to the floor. Unstick the soles of your feet and just let your knees wobble side to side for a moment. Maybe take your feet wide. Maybe take your hands overhead on the floor. And then pull your knees into your chest, give them a hug. Wrap your hands or your arms around and maybe rock yourself a little side to side. And we'll be coming right onto our bellies. So if you prefer to kind of flip yourself, get up and rotate yourself so that your head is now where your feet are, go ahead. If you're okay with just extending your legs to the bottom of your mat and then kind of flipping yourself like a pancake, that's also fine. We're not going to be here forever. We'll actually be coming back onto our backs before we come up to tabletop or seated. So just coming onto your belly. Let your head rest down, maybe putting your hands under your forehead or turning your cheek to one side, turning your face to one side. Take your right toes and curl them under. Press your heel backward and see if you can lift your leg bones off the floor a little bit. Maybe wobble your heel side to side a little. And then lay your hip and your leg and your foot back down. Top of the foot can come back to the floor. Try that on the left side. So curl the toes under. Press the heel back. Lifting the leg bones off the floor. Maybe kind of rocking your leg side to side. And then lay the hip, the leg, the foot back down. When you're ready, take your hands to either side of your chest on the floor. Point your elbows back toward your heels. Roll your shoulders down your back. Begin by just lifting head, neck, chest away from the floor. You can press your hands into the earth to start to press yourself up into back bend. And then lower back down. Try that again. Feel free to come up higher if you'd like to. Maybe coming up to cobra, maybe pressing all the way to upward dog. If you're ready for that, lower yourself back down on your exhale. Once more, lifting yourself back up. Maybe coming up a little higher. Maybe not. On your next exhale, lower yourself back down. Take a rest. Now take your hands back to your sides on the floor, just like they were. Bring your feet to touch at the bottom of your mat. We're experimenting. I'm going to give you a few options, and then you can kind of feel out which option works best in your body. So the first one we're trying is feet together at the bottom of your mat. Feel your pelvis press toward the floor, and try coming back up into that back bend. Notice if that's easier, harder, if it feels like it's in a different place in your body. Take one more breath, and at the bottom of your exhale, lower yourself back down. This time, take your feet wide, maybe as wide as your mat, just definitely a little wider than hips distance, something that's a little more than what's natural for you in a back bend, what's normal for you anyway. Feel your pelvis press toward the floor, and then let's try that again. Press the hands into the earth, lift head, neck, chest. And just notice, is that better? Is that worse? Do you like it? Do you not? Do you feel it in a different place? And then exhale, lower back down. Last option is to bend your knees. So I'd recommend choosing whichever foot placement you preferred best, and that can include your regular placement of your feet. So pick whether you like the width or the wide one, or the feet together, or the feet right under your hips distance. Place your feet where you like them. Bend your knees so that your heels start coming towards your glutes. And then come up into your back bend. And just begin to notice if that changes the pose at all. If you'd like to press all the way to upward dog while you're here, coming up toward knees on the floor, hips off the floor, you can try that out too. Take one more breath. And then lower yourself back down on your exhale. Let the feet come back down, head come back down, and take a rest. Take your right arm out to the side on the floor with your hand, your palm on the floor. Turn your head to the left and use your left hand on the floor to begin rotating your body away from the floor. So lift your left leg, start to stack your hips so your left hip is on top of your right. Nice little shoulder opener, twist, and a little bit of a hip opener too. If you'd like, you can bend that knee, maybe tap the foot to the floor behind you. Maybe you just hover it in the air. Take one more round of breath. And at the bottom of your exhale, come out the way you came in. So roll yourself back onto your belly. Turn your head back to center. Bring your arm back in. And let's try the left side. So left arm out to the side, palm on the earth. Head turns away from the arm. Press your right hand into the floor just to help you lift yourself up and over. So your hips are now kind of stacking. Right leg is hovering, or maybe you tap the foot to the floor. Begin to notice if one side of your body has been holding more tension for you than the other side. One side might feel really good, maybe the other side you feel nothing, or it feels particularly tense. At the bottom of your next exhale, go ahead and roll yourself back towards your belly. Head back to center, hands back to center. And then when you're ready, come back onto your back. Take your knees back into your chest. Give yourself another hug. This time, take your hands to your kneecaps and let your knees open to the sides if you'd like. Maybe flex your feet. This is kind of like frog, but we're upside down, so we get to be a little more loosey-goosey, creative, just silly. You can rock yourself a little side to side if that feels good. Maybe kind of tip and tuck your tailbone and just notice your sacrum kind of rolling on the floor a little bit. The back of your hips too. And then take your hands right behind your knees. And we'll rock and roll ourselves up to seated. If you don't like the rocking and rolling on your back, you can just press yourself right up to seated. So if you like it, go ahead and take a couple rocks and rolls. Use your belly muscles a little bit. Just roll through your spine. And then come up to seated. When you arrive at seated, we're coming to our Z sit. So put your right shin in front of you, left shin to the side. So you've got kind of like two triangles, Z sit, or like a lightning bolt shape, kind of. Anyway, start by just massaging out your leg muscles. You can use your hands and actually just kind of like with the leg that's in front of you. Just start by mushing around whatever's going on in there, kind of maybe pressing the bones toward the earth a little bit. I find it helpful to kind of massage right into my inner thigh and then work down toward my foot, kind of like squishing out my calf muscle with my hands. But work out whatever works best for you. And then take both hands to the floor And just start by rocking your hips backward and forward. Actually, hands to hips is probably a little more helpful for this. So taking your hips toward that right leg and then away from it. Just starting to feel out the relationship between your thigh and your hip. Allow yourself to get a little curious. Maybe you notice what things are starting to kind of maybe loosen up or wiggle out. Just noticing. And then bring yourself back up to center. So just let your hips kind of sit up tall. So they're with your hands on your hips, you might be able to notice a little better, like, oh, am I tipping them backward or forward right now? So just see if you can get them up, straight up and down. And start now to just tip them straight forward and take your hands to the floor out in front of you. This is like a modified or like a half pigeon, sort of. Half of a half, it's like a quarter pigeon. So with your hands out on the floor in front of you, you can take this as far as you'd like to, or you can back out of it and just sit up tall. If you're feeling like you really like this, maybe flex your foot and start to walk your hands forward even farther so that you get more into the outer hip. I find that bringing myself more forward brings me my brings the action kind of into like my outer glute, outer hip of my right leg. But only go as far as feels good for you. And that, I mean, if you want to bring your belly all the way to the floor, that's great. If you want to stay way upright, that's great too. So just take whatever feels best in your body. Take one more breath here. Just starting to wake up the hips. At the bottom of your exhale, walk your hands back towards your torso. So you're sitting upright again. If you flexed your foot, you can point it now. I prefer pointing for this exercise. Take your right hand, reach it up and back, and then plant the hand behind you on the earth. Press both of your shins down into the floor and start to lift your hips off the earth any amount. Pressing your pelvis kind of like forward toward that right shin, toward the front of your mat maybe. And then maybe reach your left hand up and overhead and then back behind you. Thinking about pressing pelvis a little bit forward, maybe lifting the heart a little bit more up and back. Take one more breath. And then as you exhale, lower your hips back to the earth. Take a little counter twist. So come back around with your right hand, reaching for the opposite side of your body. Exhale yourself back to center. And let's flip our legs. So now we'll do left and front, right to the side. Again, starting with that massaging of your leg muscles. I kind of feel like a cat. You ever see a cat making biscuits? You know that expression where the cat gets on a blanket and it just starts doing this? Call it making biscuits. Or the internet maybe just calls it that. That's how I feel today. All right, taking your hands now to your hips. Give yourself some rocks and rolls, a little forward, backward with your hips. And just notice if one side is a lot different than the other. I do feel a pretty big difference here from one hip to the other, but that's also just my anatomy and my anatomy's history on this earth. So it's just the way that my body has been, walking, running, whatever, moving my whole life. It will shape the way that my experience is, and it'll be different from yours. So take your hips now up to about center, whatever that centered feeling is in your hands. Flex your foot and take your hands now to the floor, starting to tip your hips forward toward that left shin, any amount. Maybe walking them farther out if that feels good. Maybe staying right up where you are, nice and tall, and just focusing into your body, noticing where you're feeling this, maybe what it's bringing up for you, and following your breath. Which, take one more of those. Take another breath. And at the bottom of your exhale, walk your hands back up towards your torso. Point your foot now if you flexed it. Take your left hand up and back. Plant your hand on the floor. Press into your shins. Begin to lift your hips off the floor any amount. And then if you'd like, you can reach your right hand overhead behind you, pressing your pelvis forward, lifting your heart a little bit, reaching through your fingertips. Take one more breath. And then lower yourself on your exhale. Back to the floor. And twist yourself around. Left hand to right side of your body. And then exhale yourself back to center. Coming right onto hands and knees now, tabletop. You have a little bit of time for free play here, so you can cat-cow. You can roll your spine or kind of take big circles with your torso. You can come all the way back to child's pose for your cat and all the way through to upward facing dog for your cow if you'd like. Totally up to you. Find something that feels good in your body, lets you move around, move your spine however you like to. When you're ready, bring yourself back to center. So shoulders over your hands, hips over your knees. Curl your toes under. Plant your hands nice and firm on the earth. Plug your shoulders into your back. Lift your knees off the floor. Press your hips up and back. And come to a downward dog. This can be really, honestly, like however your downward dog looks today is great. If that means that you're in like child's pose instead, or you prefer to put your arms, your forearms on the floor, that's totally fine. That's definitely an option. Knees can be really bent. I like knees really bent, feet really wide. That's something that works really great for my body, but feel out what feels best in yours. And take one more breath. On your next inhale, bend your knees, look forward. Step yourself to the front of your mat and come to forward fold. Again, feet can be wide, feet can be together. Think about it. What feels best in your body today? Knees can be bent, knees can be straight. You can bend and straighten. Maybe clasp your elbows. If you take your feet wide, clasp your elbows and just kind of let your torso swing a little bit side to side. Maybe trill out your lips. Let your head hang, your jaw relax. I think I'm sweeping the floor with my hair. That's kind of killing two birds with one stone. On your next inhale, press your palms to your shins. Take your head forward, tailbone backward. Crown of the head forward, tailbone backward. Halfway lift. Exhale, bend your knees. Come back to forward fold. Dig your heels in, rise to standing. Take a nice big inhale as you stretch your palms overhead. Exhale, palms to heart center. Inhale, palms overhead. Exhale, swan dive back to forward fold. Inhale to halfway lift. Exhale, tent your hands on the floor. Bend your knees. Take your right foot off the floor and start to kick your glute with your heel. So you're bending your knee like almost like you're doing a quad stretch. Lift that kneecap toward the sky and then extend the foot in the air. Inhale. Exhale, bend your left knee, your standing leg, and lower and float your flying foot to the back of your mat and bring your knee down. Take your left foot out to the left a little bit so your hands can come inside your foot. Take a second to just let your body settle here. Wiggle out anything that needs wiggling, make adjustments. If you're on a really hard surface, feel free to put something under your back knee if you'd like to. A blanket or towel is great. Now think about crown of the head forward, tailbone reaching back toward your back foot. Getting a little bit of length through your spine and maybe pressing your pelvis a little bit forward for this pose. Forward, like toward the front of your mat, toward the floor a little bit. If you'd like, you can bend your elbows coming closer to the earth. You can bring your elbows to a block or to the floor, whichever works better for you, whatever you've got. Or you can stay upright. Take one more breath. Now walk your left foot back in a little bit so that it's in line with your hip. If you've got blocks and you'd like to use them for this, we're going to bring our hips backward, bringing ourselves into this half split. Think here about keeping length through your spine. So I think for humans, we want to automatically just kind of like curl in, especially for poses that are hard. We want to like, no, I don't want to do it. So our bodies kind of curl up in on ourselves. Think about your breath. Think about lifting your crown of your head away from your tailbone a little bit. Get a little bit of length through your spine and just get a little curious about how your leg is feeling. Feel free to come out of this pose too. You can come back to the lunge if that's, if you need to take a quick break or just come out of it entirely, it's totally fine. Pulling your tailbone backward now with your spine kind of in a more straight position rather than rounded forward. Can you get into the back of your leg a little bit deeper? Into that meaty part of your thigh, right in the middle of your thigh bone. So not in your knee joint, not in your hip joint necessarily. You might feel it there too, but the focus is going to be right in the middle of the joint, big meaty muscle. Wrong. In the big part of your muscle. And if you'd like to kind of like bend and straighten a little bit, if you'd like to now take that thigh bone and rotate it a little bit inward and outward, or if you'd like to just stay right where you are, you've got tons of options. Take one more breath. And now walk your hands back toward the front of your mat. Curl your back toes under, lifting your back knee off the floor. Low lunge to high lunge. So we're bending both knees, pressing weight into both feet. Press yourself up to standing. Stack your hips. So put your hands on your hips for a moment and stack your hips up nice and tall. So again, you know how we were kind of rocking them forward, backward? Feel free to try that out a little bit here. Just kind of feel where your hips have landed. See if you can rock them forward, backward a little bit, and then find right in the middle. Now, if you'd like to think about maybe unbending your back knee, excuse me, a little bit at a time. You can kind of bend and straighten if you'd like. Kind of opening up. For me, this opens up the front of my hip all the way up into my belly a little bit by straightening the back knee a little. So feel free to try that out if you'd like to. On your next inhale, take your palms up overhead, stretch out your torso. And on your exhale, come to warrior two. On your next inhale, we're going to rotate both feet toward the long edge of our mat. Reach your palms up overhead. So we're now in this wide-legged straddle, both feet pointing straight ahead, hips pointing straight ahead to the long side of our mat. Inhale. Exhale, palms to hips. Inhale your spine long. Give your knees a little bend. Press your feet into the floor. On your exhale, take your hips like they're kind of knobs and rotate them forward so that your spine follows toward the earth. Go as far as your hips are comfortable going, and then take your hands down, maybe to the floor, maybe to your legs, maybe to a block or a chair or table in front of you. Take one more breath here. And then walk your hands toward your back foot. And turn your toes and your hips toward the back of your mat now. On your next inhale, let's rise up to high lunge at the back of the mat. Nice. Inhale, grow your spine tall. Exhale, open to warrior two. Inhale, rotate both feet back toward the long edge of your mat. Exhale, come back to warrior two facing the front of your mat. I'm making you do a lot of like foot switching, I'm sorry. On your next inhale, flip your front palm skyward. Reach up and back, straighten out your front leg. Exhale, back to warrior two. Inhale, torso forward. Reach your top arm overhead to the front of your mat. If you'd like to take some nice big guitar circles with that shoulder, go right ahead. And then grow that arm overhead to the front of your mat. Take one more breath. Exhale, take that top hand inside your foot on the floor. Turn your back heel up so you're on your back toes. And then we're going to put our weight into our front foot and step the back foot forward to the front of your mat. Forward fold. Inhale, come to halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Dig your heels in, rise to standing. Inhale, sweep your palms overhead. Exhale, palms together at heart center. Take a moment here to feel your feet on the floor. Take your arms down by your sides. Come to mountain pose. Tadasana. Feel your feet on the floor. Feel your hips over your feet. Feel your breath in your lungs and your nose and your throat. On your next inhale, grow your palms back up to the sky. Exhale, swan dive back to forward fold. Inhale, come to halfway lift. Exhale, tent your hands, bend both feet, bend both knees. Lift your left foot off the floor, starting to just kick yourself in the glute with your heel, and then lift that kneecap to the sky, and then extend the leg up into the air. Extend the foot into the air. Take one more breath. Bend your standing leg, float your flying foot to the back of your mat, and bring your knee down, top of the foot down. Take that foot out to the side now, the front foot, out to the side so that your hands can come inside your foot. And again, take whatever variation, whatever adjustments feel best in your body right now. If you feel really good and you want to come closer to the floor, go ahead. If you're feeling really good right where you are and you want to stay more upright, that's great too. Either way, thinking about pelvis forward a little and toward the floor a little with each breath. All right. Walk that front foot back in line with your hip. Take your blocks if you want them and shift your hips backward again. Half split. Again, find that length through your spine. So think tailbone back, crown of the head forward. Awesome. Yep. So find a little length through your spine. If that means you bend your knee more so that you can do that, I think that's great. I personally find that to be pretty helpful because it does take the strain out of my knee joint and my hip joint. It puts it right into the meaty part of my muscle. So try that out. Maybe sit yourself back a little farther. Maybe bend and straighten that knee. Maybe roll the thigh bone at the hip socket, or maybe just stay really still. Totally up to you. Find your own form of expression in this pose. And take one more round of breath. All right, walk your hands back to the front of your mat. Curl your back toes under. Lift your back knee off the floor. Put weight into both feet. And then lift yourself up off your thigh, coming up to standing. Take your hands back to your hips again for a moment. Feel that out. See if you can get your hips to be level, both kind of pointing straight ahead, level with the earth so they're not tipped way forward or tucked way backward. Some are right in the middle. And then you can grow your arms up to the sky. And then if you'd like, you can bend and straighten that back leg. Maybe you just unbend and hold. Maybe you just keep it bent. Totally up to you. Take one more breath. Grow your fingertips into the sky. And on your exhale, let's open to Warrior Two. I'm just going to flip around so that I can see everybody still. Awesome. Warrior Two. On your next inhale, bring your palms up overhead. Turn your front foot to face the long edge of your mat. Back into this wide-legged straddle, and then take hands to hips. Plant your feet on the floor, bend your knees. Take your hips and turn them like doorknobs toward your thighs. Go as far as your hips are comfortable going today, and then bring your hands down. Let your head come down. If you'd like this time to maybe walk your hands forward, so you're in this like wide-legged downward dog. Kind of a fun variation. I don't know if you can, oh yeah, you can see me. Okay. At the bottom of your next exhale, walk your hands back underneath you, bend your knees. Take your hands now to your left foot at the back of your mat. Lifting your back heel off the floor. Put weight into both feet and rise up to standing in high lunge. Inhale, palms overhead. Exhale, open to Warrior Two. Inhale, palms overhead. Turn your feet back to the long edge of your mat. Exhale, Warrior Two to the front of your mat again. So bending into your right knee. You guys are troopers. This is great. On your next inhale, flip your front palm, reach up and back, straighten out that front leg, reverse triangle. Exhale, back to Warrior Two. Inhale your torso forward. Side angle, so forearm to thigh or hand inside leg. Take that top arm into guitar circles if you'd like. And then grow that hand overhead to the front of your mat. And take one more breath. At the bottom of that exhale, take that top arm to the floor inside your front foot. Come back onto your back toes. Put weight into your front foot, and then step your back foot to the front of your mat. Inhale, come to halfway lift. Exhale, dig your heels in, rise to standing. Inhale, grow your palms overhead. Exhale, palms together to heart center. And take a moment in mountain pose, hands to your sides. Tadasana, feet on the floor. Hips over heels, heart over hips, head over heart. On your next inhale, sweep your palms overhead. Exhale, swan dive to forward fold. Inhale, come to halfway lift. Exhale, step yourself back to tabletop. Come onto your seat and just roll yourself onto your butt and then onto your back. I guess I could just say lie down, but from standing to lying down, there's a lot of movement that has to happen in the middle. So however you want to get there is fine. Just get onto your back, bring your knees back into your chest, give them a little bit of a rock and roll hug. Rolling yourself side to side, forward, backward on your back of your hips a little bit. Bring the soles of your feet to the floor. Knees together, feet together. And then let your knees open out to the sides. Soles of the feet touch each other. Supta Baddha Konasana, bound angle pose. If you'd like to stick something under if you're feeling like this is a little too much on your hips, you can always stick some blankets or pillows or blocks under your thigh bones, just to let yourself kind of rest with a little more support underneath you. Take a moment here. Your hands can go wherever you want, so just find a place for your hands. They can be on your body, they can be overhead or just out to the side, it doesn't matter. When you're ready to come out of this pose, take your hands to either side of your legs, the outsides, and just help your legs back to center. Take your legs out long on the floor. We're coming to Shavasana, so please feel free to take any adjustments that you need here. And if legs on the floor is not super comfortable for you today, you can bend your knees. You can stay in Supta Baddha Konasana if you prefer. Wherever you land, just take some time to let yourself land wherever you feel most comfortable and grounded. Take a moment to check in with your body. Notice sensations, physical sensations of air, fabric, of breath in your body. Draw your awareness to the pace and the temperature and the tempo of your breath. And then come back to your mind. Begin noticing if any thought patterns keep coming up. Or maybe it doesn't seem like a pattern at all. Maybe it's a whole bunch of different ideas today. Can you look at those ideas with a little bit of maybe curiosity or or just kind of as an observer? Notice the thought and then see if you can let it pass and come back to where you are, right here, right now. When you're ready to come out of Shavasana, take your time. Start with your breath. Maybe taking deeper inhales, maybe pressing the air out on your exhale. Wiggle your fingers and toes, your small muscles in your face. And eventually roll yourself to one side and let your practice settle into your body. And when you're ready, press yourself up to seated at your own pace. On an inhale, sweep your palms overhead. Exhale, palms together down to heart center. Maybe rub them together and get a little bit of heat going. And then lay them over your heart. And if you'd like, you can take a little bow to yourself, your body, your practice, your classmates. Thank you so much for showing up today. Please take very, very good care of yourselves.